Donald Trump's strategy towards North Korea is such a failure that a different U.S. tack is obviously needed. Sanctions and threats have not prevented Kim Jong-un's regime from developing rockets apparently capable of carrying nuclear warheads to the American mainland, as last week's second successful test of an intercontinental ballistic missile showed. The U.S. leader's response was yet more criticism of Beijing for not doing enough to stop Pyongyang's weapons programs, further testing of a missile defense system and the flying of bombers over the Korean peninsula, all in the wake of yet more sanctions approved by the U.S. Congress. China hits back at U.S. pressure to resolve North Korea nuclear crisis that leaves only three options: stronger defenses, military conflict or dialogue. The United States and its ally, Japan, have stepped up pressure on China to impose tougher sanctions, and Trump is reportedly looking at trade measures against Beijing to force action. But security on the Korean peninsula and beyond, and trade between China and the U.S. are unrelated issues. Sanctions do not work. Kim has flouted with impunity those imposed against his country by the United Nations and others, enabling uninterrupted weapons development. As China's ambassador to the UN, Liu Di, pointed out, it is primarily up to Washington and Pyongyang, not Beijing, to reduce tensions and find a solution. A war is obviously out of the question. U.S. ally South Korea would be the hardest hit. Missile defenses have limitations. The battery for the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System known as THAAD that the U.S. is building in South Korea against objections from residents in China and Russia will be severely tested should North Korea launch volleys of rockets. Confusingly, South Korean President Moon Jae-in responded to the latest test by approving the installation of the last 4 of 6 launchers to the battery. He froze construction after taking office in June, the gesture as much to appease Koreans as China, which considered the powerful radar system at the site an intrusion. Hand-wringing over Korea only benefits Kim Jong-un. Last month, the liberal politician reversed the position of his disgraced predecessor, Park Geun-hye, by offering North Korea negotiations to end hostilities along their heavily armed border and a fresh round of reunions of families separated by the war. His latest decision jeopardizes such overtures and potentially puts at risk talks with President Xi Jinping expected for later this year. Trump holds the key to ending the crisis. North Korea and the U.S. have not signed a peace treaty ending the war, but Washington has refused dialogue until Pyongyang scraps its nuclear program. Kim has thumbed his nose at the sanctions and threats, proving how flawed the approach is. The only sensible option is talking to the regime.